Welcome to On the Go with AAUW, the American Association of University Women. I'm your host, Jennifer DeSano, the Executive Director of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at George Mason University. Today, our show is about the Literacy Council of Northern Virginia, and with us in the studio to tell us about the work of the Literacy Council are Dr. Carol Vinograd Busal, Director of Academic and Student Affairs, and Ruba Marshood Afzal, Director of Partnerships and Community Engagement. Welcome, and thank you both for being on the program today.
Thanks so much
nice
for
to
having
have
us.
you.
Thank you, Jennifer. We're really pleased to have this opportunity.
And the work that you're doing, Literacy Council of Northern Virginia, is so impactful and so important. I would love to delve right into that, but first I want to get to know both of you. Ruba, can you tell me a little bit about your background, how you arrived at your position here at the Literacy Council? And then Carol, following Ruba, I'd love to hear from you as well.
Sure, yeah. So I started at the Literacy Council of Northern Virginia, we say LCNV, over 8 years ago. Before that, I had been working in international development, largely overseas. I had most recently been living and working in Papua New Guinea in community development work, and came back to the States into this area around the time of the recession, and feeling really compelled to do something in my own community and kind of serve my backyard, so to speak. And was able to, my mother-in-law had actually been a teacher with LCNV for quite a while and had always raved about the folks that she interacted with and her students. And so when I came back here and was settling in, I called her up. I said, what is that organization? I had the opportunity to start out volunteering and teaching some of our learners, and then later the opportunity to join the staff arose, and I've just really enjoyed being here. Having come from an international background, now being here where we're serving so many learners from so many different parts of the world feels like a really nice story.
And making them feel comfortable in getting into a situation where they're going to be able to communicate within their communities.
Absolutely.
And thrive. And Carol, why don't you tell us about how you arrived at your position here?
My career has been varied, all focusing on education, different aspects at local, state, federal level policy work, worked for a while for a newspaper in education. I began with evaluating children with learning disabilities and working with teachers and parents how to better structure the lessons so that they could grasp it. And I have found that work like that has carried over into the work that I do now. Another thing that I was involved in is I worked on a number of case studies of school districts that are recognized as having excellent ESL programs for children. So I did a lot of work at the children's level, and then I was led from that into the role of parents in terms of what their children learn and their level of success. And I did some controlled studies of parental reading instruction and the impact on children. And then I decided I was interested in adults, and I went and I got a certificate of English teaching to adults from Cambridge, the CELTA certificate. And I did some volunteer work with folks who were clients of an organization that worked with asylees who had experienced torture in their own countries. And after that, I was so moved by that work that I was kind of hooked, and I thought I would like now to get back to the level of work that keeps me close to the client, not as far removed as the policy work. And I found this opportunity, and I've been very fortunate. And I'm also the child of immigrants myself, so we have an office where all the staff have interesting backgrounds. Many of them are kids of immigrants. Many of them speak a variety of languages, and we can be called upon when somebody walks in the office and who doesn't speak Spanish but speaks something else. We usually have somebody on hand who can talk to them. So that's kind of the the short overview.
Very good. And
Yeah.
so the organization, the Literacy Council of Northern Virginia, really didn't start serving immigrants. It started by serving locals in the Alexandria kind of community in 1960s. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the history,
Sure.
and then we can get into the mission and some accomplishments.
Yeah. So it's true. The organization was established in 1962, and it was started by a grassroots group of City of Alexandria residents who were just alarmed at the rate of adults with very little or no literacy skills. And in the 60s, in Northern Virginia, the demographics were quite different, but as those shifted, so did the organization. By the 80s, the demographics had shifted and our programs shifted as well. And today we serve almost exclusively an immigrant population of folks who we serve about 1,500 learners a year from 90 different countries who speak about 60 different languages. What they all have in common is that their English proficiency is below the 6th grade level, at or below the 6th grade level. And our programs have shifted to meet their needs. Where they're at.
And now you have a variety of educational programs, and I know, Carol, that you are in charge, perhaps, of these programs and the development of them. Why don't you tell us about the different categories, and then we'll go into each category and delve a little deeper.
Sure, I'd be happy to. We have our core track of beginning English courses, which are at different levels, and we have a process by which we test prospective students and place them carefully at the correct level. Then we have a family literacy program where parents can take the course, and it focuses on the parental role as the lens for literacy, and they can bring young children who are in an adjacent classroom with a teacher, and there's a crosswalk between what the parents are doing and what the children do, and periodically they get together and work on material together. Then we have skills-based classes, because while we work on speaking, understanding, reading, and writing English in the beginning English courses, we know that some folks want or need more experience with individual skills. And we really developed a unique and what I think is impressive writing curriculum that culminates in writing for academic studies. And that serves as a bridge course if you want to further your education after you leave us. And finally, our newest program we call Destination Workforce. And that is geared towards individuals who are looking to either enter the workplace or advance in a job, and that's very exciting. And then what's coming down the pike is full-fledged distance learning courses. And we do some distance learning right now, but we're looking on finding the right population who want just to do that, where right now it's a supplement to other courses. So that's coming down the road.
So you're serving individuals, you're serving families, you're serving the workforce, your programs are actually helping businesses. And I know you have some partnerships where you closed classes, and that helps to educate the worker. And can you explain some of that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. So I'll just backtrack a little bit because I think I missed actually talking about our mission. So our mission is to teach the basic skills of reading, writing, speaking, and understanding English so that the community can be empowered to participate fully and confidently in the community, in their families, in the workforce, and academically. So with that in mind, as you just said, we're serving families, we're serving individuals, we're serving the workforce, and we hope that through learning with us, they will have the opportunity to really fully express themselves and share all that they have to share with the rest of us in Northern Virginia. And we offer courses at about 15 different locations around a 450 square mile radius of Northern Virginia, everywhere from Lorton to Herndon to Alexandria and Annandale, for instance. So in doing that, just by virtue of being a small nonprofit organization, we look for partners who will help us be able to reach the wide community, and that's through our open enrollment classes. We look for partners who will host us. beyond
For
that,
example, who are some
Sure.
of your partners that would help for the general classes, the classes
Yeah.
that are open to?
so we're very fortunate to have a really, really great collaborative partnership with Fairfax County's Department of Neighborhood and Community Services. They actually host our majority of our classes. We have classes at the James Lee Community Center, Lorton Senior Center, Lincolnia Senior Center, and then we also have classes, fill me in, Carol, if I'm missing anything, but libraries and other centers. What am I missing?
Right. I
Yeah,
mean,
so other
we family
nonprofits.
learning programs
And the
collaborate
schools.
with school systems as well.
Yeah, yeah. So we have, we're grateful for
For all those
one of the
partners, yeah.
And the thing is that I found across the region there are so many great folks who are as committed. I mean, they're just fully committed to serving the community. And so when they see what we do and we see what they do, it's just like it's an easy match to make.
Right, and then you have the businesses, the side where you're actually helping people to stay employed and actually progress in their jobs because they're learning basic English and writing. And do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so one of the reasons why Carol envisioned creating Destination Workforce is just when we look at the region as a whole, and we look at Fairfax County in particular, we know that 1 in 17 people are unemployed, are poor. We know that the unemployment rate is rather low, and so that tells us that people are working, but they're not working necessarily at a living wage. And we also know from the most recent Fairfax County Needs Assessment that there's a close correlation between limited English proficiency and poverty. So we believe that there's value in helping those incumbent workers who are quite junior level, limited English proficiency, but they're hardworking, they show up on time, they've maybe been, with many of the partners that we've had to date, they've maybe been employed there for 10, 15, 20 years at the same level with very limited opportunities for promotion. So our hope is that Destination Workforce can be viewed as a professional development program for junior level employees, and we've been very fortunate to be able to partner with such employers as DoubleTree by Hilton or BF Sol Property in Tysons, Capital One, and their partners of JLL and Restaurant Associates, and Think Food Group, Jose Andres's renowned great food restaurant group in DC. And then most recently, we've also launched a partnership with the City of Alexandria's Department of Recreation, Parks, and Cultural Activities. All of these partners are employers who saw value in uplifting their workers through English, and we've been really pleased to see some results
And
from
if I
that.
could elaborate a
Please.
little bit on the workers, there was a time years ago that if you came to this country and you got a job working in a kitchen, for example, but you didn't speak English, you would be surrounded by native speakers of English, and you would learn, you would maybe learn English on the job even. Nowadays, what you find is that people working what we call in the back of the house, like at a restaurant, doing dishes, cooking, perhaps working in a hotel or retirement community as housekeepers, those kinds of jobs, employers are finding that they can hire people who all speak the same language. So you have a situation where an individual wants to learn English, but they're here in a family, everybody speaks their language. They go to jobs, maybe 2 jobs in order to survive, and they never have an opportunity to learn English. Even required training like OSHA training can be delivered in people's native language because it's very important that they understand it. So we are trying to show businesses that it makes good business sense to advance people from within by investing in them, because you get employees who stay and who feel really committed to the business. So
We've
that's
had
one of
some
the
learners
things.
who were promoted after being in a class. So they
Yeah,
might
you
have been
have
there for
some,
10 years in the same position, and now they're more proud to be there. They've had now opportunities to become a manager, for instance.
And it helps just integration of, assimilation in a sense into the wider community to self-advocate. If you don't know the language, you're going to have a harder time in every respect, even outside the workforce.
If I can share an example, actually,
Sure.
we had a learner in our Think Food Group class who was at really beginning level, and she was very shy to practice English with the HR director there. And the HR director was a huge advocate and really there supporting every class, every night. They're supporting the class. And one day that student came up to her and said, "It's too cold in here. Can we turn the AC down?" And our contact, our HR manager, she was just thrilled. Donna is her name. And she was just so thrilled to have her not only have the confidence to come up and talk to her, but to even then advocate for herself and make a request, even though she couldn't accommodate because the temperature was set somewhere else, so she couldn't accommodate it. But it was just...
That's a moment of empowerment for someone who otherwise wouldn't have had that opportunity because of the language barrier. Yeah. And that you see that also in the school system as well. Parents are expected to be very engaged with their students' education, and so if there's a language barrier, that becomes very difficult. I know that Fairfax County Public Schools often will have interpreters available at times, but that's not the same as knowing the language and being able to really understand the what's going on or what's expected, or getting engaged even with the PTA and things like that.
That's right. And another example of something that happens in our family learning classes is sometimes they're geared towards parents of middle school students. And middle school students often would not be caught going to school with their parents to attend a family learning class. But we can make sure that parents understand the issues that impact that age group. Things like bullying, what happens if somebody offers to sell you drugs, what about if somebody wants to cheat off of your test, things that parents who are from another country may not realize are issues that impact their kids while they're at school. So we make a point of teaching the parents about those issues and saying, go home and talk about it at the dinner table. Let your kids know that you're aware of what they're facing when they're at school. And that's an important part of learning the culture of the country that you live in and having an impact on your kids at the same time.
Yeah, and I was kind of surprised as long as I've been with the organization. I recently read that 51% of Fairfax County Public School students return home to homes where English is not the primary language. And so when you think about that, and then I even see my kids' Wednesday packet comes home and it's go to Sign Up Genius for this activity or PTA letters or this thing, and I just think to myself, this is hard for me to do. I can't imagine how hard it's just that much harder for our English language learner families. And so the overarching goal of our family learning program is to empower the parents to participate and be fully engaged in their children's education. We know that that could be the single greatest indicator of a child's success. So
let's talk about the flow of how you get clients. You're doing some outreach to businesses through your partnerships. You're also reaching out to county organizations that are helping as well. But what other methods do you have for getting the word out to these communities and for them to try to come and access some of the services that you offer?
Yeah, so largely many of them are referred to us from higher level English programs. So maybe Fairfax County ACE or NOVA systems would refer them to us. And we also just rely on the network of communities. So yes, we share with businesses, we share with libraries, we share our programs with other social service agencies. So maybe they're going to a health clinic and they'll be able to share our flyers. Honestly, the population we serve, it's a hard one to really know for sure any metrics of how they found out about us. Many of them, perhaps it was a relative or a friend, saw the flyer and brought it home to the person who's actually the English learner.
Well, maybe some of the folks who need this service will be watching this program right now and be able to go to your website, which we're going to put that on the screen for people to have access to. And or you can Google Literacy
Yeah.
Council of Northern Virginia to get more information.
Absolutely, and if I can just
Oh,
do,
sure,
do
go
a little
ahead.
plug on our website, you can actually, there's a feature on our website to toggle the language so that if they're not fully proficient in reading in English, they could select the language that they do read and access all of our information that way.
Oh, very good.
Including registration forms. If they could get an English-speaking friend to help them fill it out, they can come to a registration and be quite a bit ahead in the process.
And what is there's a slight fee for some of these classes, but not something that couldn't be insurmountable, and apparently reasonable in terms of other area offerings. And the programming that you're doing is progressive. So you have a kind of level 1, level 2, level 3 in just the basic literacy offerings, correct?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so along with the basics, then they can move on to these other programs and progress to gain other skills like research and writing.
Yeah. What we've
That's
tried
right.
to do really at the Literacy Council, and Carol's
Yeah.
been largely in charge of helping make it come to fruition, is create kind of the community college model for a beginning level English language learner. So we comply with federal education standards in all of our programming and try to create course offerings that will help them advance towards their goals, whether it's academic goals, whether it's work related, whether it's family, that they can pick and choose the courses that work for them, and we'll place them based on their skill in the appropriate level.
And you won
Right.
some awards recently, I believe, right?
Yeah.
We did.
So we were recognized by Parade Magazine as they went around the country selecting one charity from every state as the outstanding charity for that state, and we were selected as the outstanding charity for Virginia.
It's fabulous.
Yeah.
The catalog
We've
of
been-
philanthropy, right?
Yep,
Greater
multiple
Washington
years.
area. We've been recognized. And then we were very excited last April. The U.S. Department of Education, the Division for Adult Education that we follow a lot of their standards, they were looking for a place to observe some new programming called Integrated Education and Training. And they inquired with our state colleagues in the State Department of Education here about what programs there were, and they ended up selecting us to come and observe the course. And included in the group that came, it was like 4 officials from the U.S. Department of Education, was Assistant Secretary Scott Stump. So we were very honored to be recognized as, playing a leadership role in the development of that kind of programming.
Yeah, that's excellent. Congratulations. So let's bring our audience into the classroom and talk about the experience that the student is going to have with regard to who's teaching. So you have a kind of a combination of paid staff and volunteer staff. Can you walk me through what that experience would be and how that's kind of formulated in terms of the spaces that you are you're hosting these classes at?
I'd like to give some background to that in terms of what distinguishes our approach. Is we try to ground the structure of our organization in research. So I'm sure your viewers know that there is a long history of research in class size. So we're familiar with that research and also with the benefit of a high instructor to student ratio. So we aim for a 1 to 7 instructor to student ratio and a classroom averaging around 15 students. All that is not just random, it's very deliberate. And while we have one teacher who's in charge, we consider aides who are in the classroom as instructors. They go through our instructor training. They get familiar with the books and the methods that are used. Sometimes if there's a student in the class who's having particular difficulty, we might bring in another aide just to sit with that student in class. And that's kind of how our approach is. We build in digital literacy because we consider that literacy is no longer just text-based. To really participate equitably in our society, you have to have some familiarity with technology. And that can have some variation depending on the student's socioeconomic level. Not everybody has a computer at home. Not everybody even has internet access. But we are finding that more and more students not only have phones, but have smartphones. So we value and orient our teachers in delivering teaching using technology. And we try to get some of the learning experience to be using technology, and that will help the student. It will also help them at home with their kids and with just participating in community life. It can help them if they get a job. They need to know how to send an email to a supervisor. So the role of technology cannot be underestimated.
We take for granted in our
Right.
day-to-day life, and these are things the skills they need to learn and to get access to. I know you have a couple of examples, some testimonials per se.
Oh, sure.
And that you have a compilation here in a document that you put together called My Voice Matters by the student essays. And did you want to share one or two of those?
Sure, yeah. Actually, as I pull up the story, I wanted to share one of memorable stories. We have our program that the Assistant Secretary of the Department of Education, when he came to visit, was one of our courses where they're both learning English but also receiving workforce training towards a customer service credential. And we've had learners graduate with that credential and get jobs immediately. And it's just so rewarding to see, and how she's then later said she's so proud for her daughter to look up to her now that she's accomplished this. And so so this book we put out every year, and it coincides with our annual recognition ceremony, which is kind of our version of a commencement ceremony. And we, to put it all together, we first and foremost want to put our students' voices front and center. So we invite them all to write an essay on the theme, and the theme this year was My Voice Matters. So this essay is from one of our learners who had been with the program for a few years, and she says, "Learning English has changed my life in the U.S. Before, I couldn't introduce myself to my neighbors, and I couldn't understand English while watching TV. Now I can understand English when I watch TV and communicate with my neighbors. Before, I couldn't make a doctor's appointment or listen to directions on my phone when I drove my car. Now I can help my daughter go to school and have conversations with my daughter's teacher. I didn't understand about civic history in the United States. Now I am a U.S. citizen. I feel so happy and wonderful that I'm an American now and I can vote next year."
That's really fantastic,
really
and a great
great.
way to end our discussion today. I want to thank you both so much for the work that you're doing at the Literacy Council of Northern Virginia and for being on the program today. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. And if I can just say, we certainly couldn't do anything we do without the help of a cohort of over 500 volunteers. And our next information session for volunteers is coming up on December 11th, so you can find out more on our website.
Go on the website and check it out.
And we hear both from students and volunteers that participating in our community changes their lives. So we hope that we'll enlarge our community today.
Yeah.
Thank you both
Thank you
much.
so much for having us.
And thank you for watching On the Go with AAUW.